The rain slid down the tall glass windows of the penthouse like quiet tears, blurring the city lights below. Inside, laughter rang sharp and careless, cutting through the soft jazz playing in the background. Crystal glasses clinked. Heels clicked. Somewhere near the Marble Island, a woman laughed too loudly, the kind of laugh that tried to prove power. Outside the door, in the hallway, a woman in a faded blue coat stood still, her fingers tight around a small cleaning bag. She took one breath, then another. She had no idea that one step forward would change every life in that room. Before we go any further, I'm curious, where are you watching from right now? Stories like this travel farther than we imagine, crossing borders and hearts. Drop your city in the comments, and let's see how far this moment reaches. Inside the penthouse, Lily Hart adjusted the diamond bracelet on her wrist and scanned the room like a queen surveying her court. She was the wife of Ethan Hart, media darling, self-made billionaire. Tonight's dinner wasn't business. It was entertainment, a gathering of friends who all dressed alike, spoke alike, and laughed at the same jokes. Lily leaned closer to her friend Ava, her lips curling with mischief. "You remember that charity board meeting?" she whispered. "The one where Ethan said we should experience real life more?" Ava smirked. "Don't tell me you actually listened." Lily lifted her phone. "I did. I hired a cleaning lady. Just for tonight." Ava's eyes widened. "Here? During dinner?" Lily nodded, amused. "Relax. It's just a joke. I want to see how everyone reacts." Across the room, Ethan spoke with Michael, his longtime friend, unaware. Ethan's smile was relaxed, but there was a tiredness behind his eyes that no one noticed anymore. He worked too much, trusted too easily, and lately he felt something in his life was hollow. The doorbell rang. Conversation slowed. Someone laughed awkwardly. Lily raised her brows, pretending surprise. "Oh, that must be her," she said loudly. "I completely forgot I scheduled a cleaning." A pause followed, heavy, uncomfortable. Ethan turned. "Now." Lily waved him off. "It won't take long. I just wanted the place spotless." The door opened. Grace stepped inside quietly. She was black, mid-40s, hair pulled back neatly, face tired but kind. Her shoes were worn clean, her coat thin for the cold night. She didn't look up right away, just stood there, waiting, respectful. The room went silent. Eyes scanned her from head to toe. A man coughed. Someone whispered. Ava's smile froze. Lily tilted her head, studying Grace like an object. "You can start with the kitchen," she said casually. "We're almost done eating." Grace nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Her voice was soft, steady. As she moved toward the sink, whispers began. Not loud, but sharp enough to sting. Did she really bring her here? This is bold. Awkward. Ethan watched from across the room, his jaw tightening. Something about this felt wrong. Not just strange, cruel. Grace rolled up her sleeves and began quietly rinsing glasses, careful not to interrupt. Her hands trembled just slightly, though her face stayed calm. What no one knew was that she almost didn't come tonight. Her daughter had begged her to rest. Her body was tired, her heart even more so. But rent didn't wait. Neither did hospital bills. Lily laughed again, louder this time. "See? Multitasking. Dinner and cleaning. Efficient, right?" A few guests chuckled. Others looked away. Ethan stepped forward. Maybe this isn't the time." She shrugged. "Don't be so sensitive." Grace heard every word. She always did. As she placed a glass on the rack, her gaze briefly lifted, just enough to meet Ethan's eyes. There was no anger there. No shame. Just a quiet strength that stopped him cold. Something inside him shifted. And as Grace reached into her bag to pull out a cloth, a small object slipped from her pocket and hit the marble floor with a soft clatter. Everyone looked down. Grace froze. Her breath caught. And Lily's smile slowly began to fade. The sound was small, almost harmless, a dull click against marble, yet it echoed louder than the laughter ever had. Grace stared at the floor, her shoulders stiff, as if her body had forgotten how to move. Ethan stepped closer. On the ground lay a thin silver chain, old and slightly tarnished. At its center was a tiny hospital bracelet charm, the kind given to newborns. A name was engraved, faded but readable. Emma. Lily bent down first. "What is this?" she asked, pinching the chain between two fingers as if it might stain her skin. She laughed lightly. "Sentimental jewelry on the job? That's new." Grace swallowed. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, reaching out. "It fell by accident." Lily didn't hand it back right away. She turned it over, unimpressed. "You people are always so emotional," she said, not even trying to lower her voice. "Can't work without dragging your personal drama everywhere." A hush fell again, heavier this time. Ethan felt heat rise up his neck. "Lily," he said sharply, "that's enough. Give it back." Grace's fingers trembled as Lily finally dropped the necklace into her palm. For a brief second, Grace's composure cracked. Her eyes shone, not with tears yet, but with something close. "Thank you," she whispered, mostly to Ethan. She turned back to the sink, trying to disappear into the background again. Ethan watched her for a long moment. The way she tucked the necklace carefully into her coat pocket. The way her shoulders lifted as she took a slow, steady breath, like someone bracing against a storm no one else could see. He cleared his throat. "Why don't you take a break?" he said. "You can sit for a moment." Lily spun around. "Excuse me?" "I said she can take a break," Ethan repeated, calm but firm. "She's been standing the whole time." Grace looked up, startled. "It's okay, sir. I'm fine." But Ethan was already pulling out a chair. "Please." The room shifted. Something unspoken changed direction. Grace hesitated, then slowly sat. Her hands folded in her lap, unsure where they belonged. She kept her eyes down, as if afraid to meet anyone's gaze too long. Lily forced a smile. "You're being dramatic," she said, but it landed flat. Ethan poured a glass of water and handed it to Grace. Their fingers brushed for a split second. Her skin was cold. And in that simple gesture, water, eye contact, a chair, something human returned to the room. If you were standing there watching this unfold, what would you have done? Would you have spoken up, or stayed silent like so many others? Be honest, share your answer below. And if this moment stirred something in you, tap like to show that empathy still has a place here. Grace took a sip, her throat tight. "I don't mean to cause trouble," she said softly. "I'll finish quickly." "You're not trouble," Ethan replied. "You're a guest in my home." Lily scoffed. "A guest?" she repeated. "Ethan, she's staff." Grace flinched just slightly. Ethan's voice lowered. "And she's still a person." No one spoke after that. The guests began making excuses soon after. Early mornings, long drives, sudden headaches. One by one, they left, heels echoing down the hall, laughter gone. Ava avoided Grace's eyes as she passed. Michael lingered, then clapped Ethan's shoulder and followed the others out. Soon, only 4 people remained in the vast penthouse: Ethan, Lily, Grace, and the silence. Grace stood. "I'll finish the kitchen and be out of your way." "No," Ethan said. "You're done for tonight. I'll pay you for the full job." Grace blinked. "Sir, I insist." Lily crossed her arms. "So now you're a hero?" she snapped. "Embarrassing me in my own home?" Ethan turned to her, eyes tired but unyielding. "You embarrassed yourself." That was the moment Lily realized something was slipping from her control. Grace gathered her things slowly, unsure. At the door, she paused. "Thank you for the water. And the kindness." Ethan nodded. "Be safe." When the door closed behind Grace, Lily exploded. "What was that?" she demanded. "You undermined me in front of everyone." Ethan didn't raise his voice. "You mocked her. For entertainment." "It was a joke." She didn't laugh. Silence stretched between them, thick and unfamiliar. That night, long after Lily stormed into the bedroom, Ethan sat alone in the living room, staring at the spot where Grace had sat. He couldn't shake the image of that necklace. Of the name. Of the way her strength had worn quiet dignity like armor. Across the city, in a small apartment with flickering lights, Grace unlocked her door and leaned back against it, finally letting the tears fall. She pressed the necklace to her chest. "Emma," she whispered. And far away, in that glittering penthouse, Ethan lay awake, unaware that this woman, dismissed as a joke, carried a past that would soon turn his world upside down. Morning crept in quietly through the thin curtains of Grace's apartment, painting pale stripes across the worn wooden floor. The place was small, 2 rooms, chipped paint, a couch that doubled as a bed when her daughter visited. The radiator rattled like it always did, but Grace barely noticed. She sat at the tiny kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of reheated coffee, untouched. The night before still clung to her skin. She kept seeing Lily's smile, hearing the laughter, feeling that old, familiar burn, the one she thought she'd learned to live with. Grace closed her eyes and inhaled slowly, the way the nurse once taught her in a hospital hallway many years ago. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Don't break. Her phone buzzed. A text from the hospital. She didn't open it right away. Instead, her gaze drifted to the framed photo on the wall. A little girl with braided hair and a gap-toothed smile, missing one front tooth. Emma at 7. Laughing on a playground. Alive. Grace reached out and touched the glass gently. "I'm trying," she whispered. She finally opened the message. Billing reminder, outstanding balance due. Her shoulders sagged. Another reminder. Another weight added to a pile that never seemed to shrink. Grace stood, grabbed her coat, and headed back out into the cold. There was another cleaning job across town, a doctor's office. No jokes there. Just quiet, sterile walls and polite distance. As she rode the bus, the city passed by in gray blurs. Every stop brought new faces, new lives brushing past hers without knowing a thing about her story. They never did. They saw the uniform, the mop, the bowed head. Not the woman who once worked 2 jobs while attending night classes. Not the mother who memorized medical terms just to understand her child's diagnosis. Not the night spent sleeping upright in a hospital chair, afraid to blink. Years earlier, Grace had stood in a brightly lit hospital room, holding Emma's tiny hand while machines beeped around them. "Leukemia," the doctor had said gently. "Treatable," he'd promised. Grace believed him, because believing was the only option. She worked harder than ever then. Cleaning offices by day. Homes by night. Anything to keep insurance. Anything to stay afloat. She smiled through exhaustion. Prayed through fear. Emma fought bravely. Too bravely for a child. When the treatment stopped working, the hospital bracelet came off, but Grace kept it. A reminder of love. Plus, of the part of her heart that never healed. The bus jolted to a stop. Grace blinked, pulling herself back to the present. She wiped her eyes quickly before standing. She had learned how to cry without being seen. Across the city, Ethan Hart stood in front of the full-length mirror in his office, adjusting his tie and failing to focus. His mind kept drifting back to the woman in the blue coat. To the way she held herself together when most people would have shattered. To Lily's laughter, and how wrong it sounded now. At lunch, Ethan barely touched his food. His assistant noticed but didn't comment. By mid-afternoon, he'd made a decision that surprised even himself. "Can you find me the cleaning service Lily used last night?" he asked. "Of course," his assistant replied. "Is there a problem?" "No," Ethan said slowly. "There's a question." When Grace finished her shift that evening, her body ached in that deep, familiar way. She counted the cash carefully, slid it into her wallet, and stepped back into the cold. Snow had started to fall, soft at first, then heavier. Her phone rang. A known number. She almost ignored it. Almost. "Hello," she said. "Grace." The voice was calm, respectful. "This is Ethan Hart. I hope I'm not calling too late." Her breath caught. She stopped walking. Yes, sir," she replied, confusion threading through her voice. "I wanted to apologize," he said. No hesitation. No excuse. For last night. For what my wife did. And for what I allowed to happen before I spoke up. Grace closed her eyes. The streetlight above her flickered. "You don't have to." "I do," Ethan interrupted gently. "I also wanted to ask, would you be willing to have coffee with me? Just to talk." She frowned. Talk about what? About you, he said honestly. If you're willing. Snow settled on her shoulders as she stood there, torn. Part of her wanted to say no, to protect herself. Another part, quieter but persistent, wondered why this man's voice sounded so different from the others. I don't usually, she began. I understand, Ethan said. No pressure. If you say no, I'll respect it. Grace looked up at the dark sky, snowflakes melting on her lashes. All right, she said finally. One coffee. They agreed on a small cafe near the hospital. When the call ended, Grace's hands shook, not with fear, but with something unfamiliar. Possibility. Have you ever had someone show up for you when you felt completely invisible? If yes, type yes in the comments, and if you can, share their name. Gratitude has a way of traveling farther than pain. That night, Grace polished her boots carefully and laid out her cleanest sweater. Across the city, Ethan sat alone in his study, staring at a city he suddenly saw differently. Neither of them knew it yet, but the truth Grace carried was already moving closer to the surface, and when it did, it would change far more than one careless joke. The cafe smelled like roasted beans and old books, the kind of place people passed every day without noticing. Grace arrived early as she always did, choosing the table farthest from the window. She wrapped her hands around the warm mug, letting the heat steady her nerves. Her sweater was plain, her hair neatly pulled back. Nothing about her announced the storm she carried inside. When Ethan walked in, the bell above the door chimed softly. He paused, scanning the room until his eyes found her. For a moment, he hesitated, like a man stepping into unfamiliar territory without armor. Then he smiled, not the polished smile from boardrooms and interviews, but something quieter. Grace, he said, pulling out the chair across from her. Thank you for coming. She nodded. Thank you for asking, respectfully. They ordered coffee. Black for both of them. For a while, neither spoke. Outside, cars hissed past on wet pavement. Inside, the world felt strangely still. I've been thinking about that night, Ethan began. About how easy it was for everyone, including me, to laugh or stay silent. And how hard it must have been for you to stand there. Grace didn't look up right away. You get used to it, she said. That doesn't make it right. But it makes it survivable. He frowned. No one should have to survive kindness. That made her glance up. Their eyes met. Something unguarded passed between them. They talked slowly at first. About work. About the city. About nothing important. Until Grace surprised herself by answering honestly when Ethan asked, "Why cleaning?" It was flexible, she said. When my daughter was sick, I needed hours I could control. Ethan's fingers tightened slightly around his cup. Grace inhaled. The cafe lights blurred just a little. She passed away, she said, simple and devastating. 5 years ago. Ethan didn't interrupt. Didn't rush to fill the silence. He just listened. She was 7, Grace continued. Loved drawing suns in the corners of her homework. Said they made the page happier. Ethan swallowed. I'm so sorry. Grace nodded. She'd heard the words before. They never fixed anything, but they mattered when they were sincere. As they spoke, Grace felt something loosening inside her chest. Not healing, not yet, but breathing. For the first time in years, she wasn't explaining herself to defend her worth. She was simply being heard. Across the city, Lily sat in the penthouse, staring at her phone. Ethan hadn't come home the night before. No messages. No apologies. She replayed the dinner in her mind. The laughter, the moments slipping out of her control. The way Ethan had looked at that woman. Not with pity. With respect. That unsettled her more than anger ever could. Back at the cafe, Ethan leaned forward. Grace, I'd like to help. Not with charity. With opportunity. I have a foundation that funds training programs. Education. Healthcare support. Grace stiffened. I'm not asking for pity. I know, he said quickly. That's why I'm asking, not assuming. She studied him carefully. Why me? Ethan hesitated. Then spoke the truth. Because you reminded me of who I used to be, before comfort dulled my conscience. Grace exhaled slowly. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. When they stood to leave, Ethan opened the door for her. Cold air rushed in. Grace pulled her coat tighter. Whatever you decide, he said. Thank you for trusting me with your story. As Grace walked away, her steps felt lighter, not because life had changed, but because someone had finally seen her. Now it's your turn. Think of one small act of kindness you've done recently, or one you wish you'd done differently. Share it in the comments so others remember that humanity still lives. Your words might be the light someone needs tonight. That evening, Grace returned home to a message waiting on her phone. Voicemail, unknown number. She pressed play. Grace, the voice said, gentle and formal. This is the hospital billing office. Please call us back regarding a change in your account. Her heart skipped. She called immediately. Yes, the clerk said after a pause. Your outstanding balance has been addressed. Paid in full. Grace sat down hard on the edge of her bed. Paid by who? I'm not authorized to say, the clerk replied. But your account is now closed. The line went dead. Grace stared at the wall, pulse racing. She didn't need to ask. She already knew. Across the city, Ethan stood alone in his study, phone in hand, watching the skyline glow. He told himself it wasn't about saving someone, just restoring balance. But deep down, he felt something else stirring. A reckoning was coming. And Lily, pacing the penthouse floor, felt it too, though she didn't yet know how deeply the truth she mocked was about to cut. Grace didn't sleep that night. She lay on her bed fully dressed, staring at the ceiling where a faint crack ran from one corner to the other. The room felt different now, not lighter, not safer, just louder with thoughts she couldn't quiet. The hospital bill had been a shadow over her life for years, following her into every shift, every late night, every silent prayer. And now, it was gone. Just like that. She sat up and pressed the necklace to her chest, the cool metal grounding her. Emma, she whispered again, the name both a comfort and a wound. What would you think of all this? In the early morning, she made a decision. Grace didn't like debts, especially invisible ones. She dressed carefully and took the bus across town, her hands folded in her lap the entire ride. When she reached Ethan's office building, the glass tower rose into the sky like a symbol of a world she didn't belong to. People in tailored suits moved with purpose through revolving doors. Grace hesitated, then stepped inside. At the reception desk, the young woman smiled politely. Can I help you? I'm here to see Ethan Hart, Grace said. He's expecting me. The receptionist checked her screen, surprised, then nodded. This is. Go right up. When Grace entered Ethan's office, he stood immediately. You didn't have to come, he said softly. Yes, Grace replied. I did. She didn't sit. You paid the hospital bill. Ethan didn't deny it. I hope that wasn't crossing a line. Grace's eyes glistened, but her voice stayed steady. You erased years of fear without asking me. I know, he said. And I'm sorry for that. I couldn't unsee it. The weight you were carrying. Grace exhaled, long and shaky. I don't know how to say thank you for something that big. You don't have to, Ethan replied. Let it be done. She looked around the office, the art, the view, the polished calm, and then back at him. I won't be your charity project, she said firmly. But I won't pretend this didn't change my life. Ethan nodded. That's fair. What neither of them noticed was the figure standing just outside the glass wall. Lily. She had come to confront Ethan, rehearsed accusations ready, pride stiffening her spine. But she stopped short when she saw Grace inside his office. Standing tall. Unashamed. Not begging. And then she heard just enough. Paid the hospital bill. The word struck Lily like ice water. She backed away slowly, her mind racing. Hospital? Bill? That woman wasn't just a cleaner. She was human. Complicated. Suffering. For the first time, Lily felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Fear, not of losing status, but of facing herself. That evening, Lily sat alone at the long dining table, untouched food growing cold. When Ethan came home, she didn't explode. She didn't accuse. She simply asked quietly, "What did you see in her?" Ethan stopped, considered the question. "I saw someone who survived what would have broken most people," he said, "and stayed kind." Lily looked down at her hands. The diamonds felt heavy now. "I didn't know," she whispered. "No," Ethan replied. "You didn't try to." The silence between them wasn't angry anymore. It was heavy with truth. Days passed. Grace noticed small changes in her life. Jobs canceled, replaced by better ones. A call from a community college about a scholarship she never applied for. A sense that the ground beneath her feet was finally steady. But with that stability came something else. Courage. One afternoon, Grace stood in front of a classroom, hands clasped, heart pounding. She had been invited to speak, just briefly, about resilience, about work, about dignity. The students listened eyes wide, as she spoke not like a victim, but like a woman who had lived. At the back of the room, Ethan watched quietly. And next to him, unseen by Grace, Lily. Lily listened as Grace spoke about Emma. About laughter in hospital rooms. About how pain didn't excuse cruelty, and how kindness didn't require permission. Lily's chest tightened. Her throat burned. When the talk ended, the room filled with applause. Grace bowed her head, overwhelmed. If that moment reached your heart, leave a red heart in the comments. Sometimes one small symbol can speak the feelings we don't yet have words for. Lily turned away quickly, wiping at her eyes. This time, there was no audience. No joke. Just a woman reckoning with the harm she had caused. That night, Lily found the cleaning service number again. Her finger hovered over the screen for a long time before she called. "Hello," she said when someone answered. "My name is Lily Hart. I need to apologize to someone I hurt." Across the city, Grace stood at her window, watching the sun set in quiet colors. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, forgiveness, confrontation, or closure. But for the first time in years, she felt ready for any of it. Because the truth was out now. And it was changing everyone it touched. The phone rang while Grace was washing dishes, warm water running over her hands, soap bubbles popping softly at the surface. She dried her fingers on a towel before answering. "Hello." There was a pause. A breath. "Grace," a woman's voice said. Tighter than expected. Less confident than it wanted to be. "This is Lily Hart." Grace closed her eyes. She had imagined this moment in 100 different ways. Anger, silence, confrontation. None of them prepared her for how tired Lily sounded. "I'm listening," Grace said quietly. "I don't know how to start," Lily admitted. "And I know saying sorry doesn't erase what I did. But I need you to hear it anyway." Her voice wavered. "I mocked you. I used you. I treated you like a prop. And I was wrong." Grace leaned against the counter, the weight of the words pressing gently into her chest. "I can't undo it," Lily continued. "But I want to own it. Fully. Without excuses." Silence followed. Not awkward, not angry. Just real. Grace finally spoke. "Do you know why it hurt so much?" she asked. "Not because it was new. But because it wasn't." Lily's breath hitched. "I've stood in rooms like yours my whole life," Grace said. "Invisible when convenient. Humiliating when entertaining." "I didn't see that," Lily whispered. "No," Grace replied. "You didn't look." Another pause. "I don't expect forgiveness," Lily said. "But if you ever allow me the chance to do something right, anything, I will." Grace looked at the necklace on the table, the charm catching the light. She thought of Emma. Of all the times she'd wished someone had chosen kindness sooner. "Doing something right," Grace said gently, "starts with doing it whether I forgive you or not." Lily nodded, though Grace couldn't see it. "I understand." They hung up soon after. No drama. No closure tied neatly with a bow. Just truth laid bare. Across town, Lily sat alone in the penthouse long after the call ended. The silence she once filled with laughter now forced her to sit with herself. For the first time, she didn't reach for distraction. She reached for responsibility. Weeks passed. Grace's life didn't transform into a fairy tale. Grief didn't disappear. But it softened around the edges. She began teaching part-time at the community center, helping others learn skills that had once saved her. She smiled more, not because she forgot, but because she remembered what it felt like to hope. Ethan watched these changes quietly, never stepping into the spotlight. When Lily suggested hosting a fundraiser for families facing medical debt, publicly, transparently, he didn't stop her. He watched her work. Not for praise. Not for image. But with intent. One evening, Lily stood on a small stage, her voice steady but humble. "I once laughed at pain I didn't understand," she said to the room. "Tonight isn't about redemption. It's about repair." Grace sat near the back, unseen. She didn't clap loudly. She didn't smile widely. But she stayed. Be honest, after everything that's happened, could you forgive if you were in Grace's place? Type forgive if you think you could, or never if the wound would be too deep for you. After the event, Lily found Grace near the exit. "I didn't expect you to come," Lily said. "I didn't come for you," Grace replied. "I came for the families." Lily nodded. "That's fair." They stood together in silence for a moment. Not friends, not enemies. Just two women standing on different sides of the same truth. "I don't need you to like me," Lily said softly. "I just want to be better." Grace looked at her, really looked. Saw fear, regret, effort. "Then keep going," Grace said. "Even when no one's watching." That night, as Grace walked home under streetlights glowing like small stars, she felt something unfamiliar loosen its grip. Not forgiveness, but release. And sometimes, that was enough to let the heart breathe again. Spring arrived quietly, almost shyly, as if the city wasn't sure it deserved renewal yet. Trees along the sidewalks bloomed in soft whites and pale pinks, petals drifting down like slow forgiveness. Grace noticed them on her walks home from the community center, where laughter now echoed through rooms that once felt empty. She had found a rhythm. Mornings teaching. Afternoons studying toward a certification she never thought she'd afford. Evenings walking past the park where children ran freely, their voices rising into the sky. Some days still hurt. Grief had a way of ambushing her in small, ordinary moments, but it no longer crushed her chest. It sat beside her now. Quiet. Familiar. One afternoon, Grace received a handwritten note. No return address. Just careful pen strokes. "I don't expect this to mean anything to you. I just wanted you to know that because of you, 3 families won't have to choose between medicine and rent this month. I'm learning. Slowly. Lily." Grace read it twice. Then she folded it neatly and placed it beside Emma's photo. Across town, Lily stood in front of a mirror, adjusting a simple blazer. No diamonds, no flash. The foundation work had grown larger than she expected. More stories. More pain. More responsibility. Some nights she cried alone, not from guilt alone, but from the realization of how long she had lived untouched by consequences. Ethan noticed the change. Not dramatic, not loud. Just real. "You're different," he said one evening as they watched the city lights flicker on. "I hope so," Lily replied. "Because I don't ever want to be who I was." Ethan didn't answer right away. Then, "Growth doesn't erase harm," he said. "But it can stop it from spreading." That night, Grace was invited to speak again, this time at a larger event. She almost declined. Old instincts told her to stay small. But something inside her nudged forward. She stood on the stage under warm lights, hands steady. "I used to think dignity was something you earned by being quiet," she said to the crowd. "But I've learned it's something you carry, even when others try to strip it away." Faces leaned in, listening. "I didn't survive because I was strong," Grace continued. "I survived because I refused to let bitterness raise my child for me, even after she was gone." A hush fell. Grace's voice softened. "Kindness didn't save my daughter, but it saved me. And maybe that's how it keeps working, one life at a time." Applause rose slowly, then fully. In the back of the room, Lily stood still, tears tracing silent paths down her cheeks. She didn't clap right away. She pressed her hand to her heart instead. Later, as the crowd thinned, Grace stepped outside into the evening air. The city hummed gently around her. Ethan joined her, offering a small smile. "She would have been proud," he said. Grace nodded. "She already is." They stood there in companionable silence, no longer bound by circumstance, just respect. If you believe love still wins, even after deep pain, comment "him." Let's fill this space with hope, because someone scrolling right now might need to see it. As weeks turned into months, Grace's story traveled, not as spectacle, but as testimony. And Lily continued the work quietly, funding programs, showing up without cameras, learning when to speak and when to listen. One afternoon, Grace found herself back at the penthouse, not as staff, not as a guest of pity, but as a consultant for a new outreach program Ethan's company was funding. She paused at the door, memories flickering. Lily met her there. Nervous. Respectful. "Thank you for coming," Lily said. "Thank you for changing," Grace replied. They entered together. The city looked the same from those windows, but everything else felt transformed. Grace stood tall, sunlight warming her face, carrying her story not as a wound, but as a bridge. And as she looked out over the skyline, she understood something clearly at last. Redemption wasn't a moment. It was a choice, made again and again, to see, to listen, and to act with care. The penthouse no longer felt like a stage. Sunlight poured through the windows, softer now, warming the long table where papers were spread instead of crystal glasses. Laptops hummed quietly. Coffee mugs replaced champagne. Grace stood near the window, listening as ideas moved around the room. Real plans, real impact. No laughter at someone else's expense. No spectacle. Just work that mattered. When the meeting ended, people filtered out slowly. Handshakes. Thank yous. Purpose lingering in the air. Grace gathered her notebook ready to leave, when Lily spoke behind her. "Face. May I say something?" Just once. No explanations. Grace turned. Lily's hands were clasped in front of her, her posture careful. Vulnerable. "I spent years thinking power meant never having to look down," she said quietly. "But I was wrong. Power is choosing to look someone in the eye, especially when it's uncomfortable." Grace listened without interrupting. "I won't ask you to forgive me," Lily continued. "I know forgiveness isn't owed. But I promise you this, the harm I caused won't end with regret. It will end with action." Grace studied her face. She didn't see arrogance anymore. She saw someone still learning how to stand in truth. "That's enough," Grace said. "For today." Lily nodded, grateful for even that. Later, Grace walked alone through the city, the evening settling in gently. Streetlights flickered on. The air smelled like rain and spring leaves. She stopped at a small park and sat on a bench, watching children play while parents chatted nearby. She pulled the necklace from her pocket. Emma's name caught the light. Grace smiled, not wide, not loud, but full. "I didn't become bitter," she whispered. "I kept my heart open. Just like you." She thought of that night again. The laughter, the humiliation, the moment she almost disappeared into herself. And she realized something important. That night didn't define her. Her response did. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, "Not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still chose kindness." One click can be your way of saying, "I felt you. You mattered." Grace stood and continued walking, her steps steady, her shoulders lighter than they'd been in years. She didn't know what the future held, no one ever did. But she knew who she was now. Not a joke. Not invisible. Not broken. She was a woman who endured loss without letting it poison her spirit. A mother whose love outlived grief. A voice that turned pain into purpose. And somewhere, far away, someone would hear her story and choose to be kinder because of it. Because that's how healing spreads. Quietly. Humanly. One brave heart at a time.